Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Feed and Focus for Remote Work and Digital Nomads podcast. My name is Angela Sharina, and I'm a certified nutritionist and health nutrition brain performance coach for people who work remotely, who are entrepreneurs, who are rule breakers and world makers. And for a lot of digital nomads, as I've been a digital nomad for the past 11 years, it's already beginning to become hard to count all those years. So, on today's episode, we finally start our digital nomad lifestyle stories, and we begin with Kyle. Kyle is 23 years old, and he just started his nomad journey basically a year ago. And he does real estate. Did you know you can do real estate remotely? Guys, I did not know that. And so Kyle will explain how he does it and what exactly he does. Kyle is originally from Dallas, Texas, where he visits his family often. After dropping out of college at 18, he quickly found his love for self-development and fitness. And then he found his way to real estate. And after having different positions there for about 6 years, different roles, he started his own company and doing pretty well with that while on his digital nomad journey. In today's podcast episode, you'll learn how Kyle quickly learned that traveling full-time every few weeks, changing locations, and at the same time maintaining high work focus just not doable. And he opted out, like I did, for slower nomading. Kyle's advice for beginners, nomads: how to give it a try but smarter. How Kyle does real estate remotely. Kyle's view on simplifying things to prevent decision fatigue. You know, when you're a digital nomad, guys, so many things are changing around you all the time. And if you make your lifestyle complex on top of that, it's just going to be a disaster and you're going to burn out faster than you expect. How Kyle maintains the balance between great nutrition and trying exotic foods to stay fit, healthy, and focused, obviously. What suffers the most in Kyle's lifestyle routine with all the travels? A quick guess: not nutrition, not fitness. So what is it? And Kyle is still figuring that one out, how to balance it. Kyle's best advice on building friendships while traveling on the web and in real world. How Kyle personally maintains high level of fitness anywhere. How we both are fans of Jocko Willink's philosophy around discipline and how practicing discipline actually gives you more freedom. What supplements Kyle takes and why. While Kyle loves sauna so much, where he gets his fix in CDMX, Mexico, where he is right now, and how he combines it with meditation, and so much more, guys. It was one fun conversation, and we learned a ton, especially as someone just jumping in or considering jumping into the remote/nomadic journey. And Kyle also, by the way, is a fan of jumping all in, literally. So you'll learn about that one also. So without further ado, guys, just tune into this fascinating conversation and you learn a ton and you'll have a ton of fun. Hi, Kyle. So thank you so much for joining me on Feed and Focus for Remote Work and Digital Nomads podcast. Welcome to the show.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Angela.
Yeah. So where are you connecting from?
Yeah, so I'm currently in Mexico City.
That's awesome. How long have you been there?
So I have been in Mexico City off and on for the last probably almost 5 months at this point now. I spent about 4 months in Colombia before that, which is whenever I actually started my digital nomad journey was in Colombia before coming in and kind of getting a little bit more settled, so to say, in Mexico City.
And why Mexico City? Why did you decide to kind of spend a little bit more time right now in Latin America?
Sure. So really just, I guess the main driver that contributed to that decision was one of my best friends and people who actually works with me in my company originally from Mexico. I'm from Dallas, and he was my roommate there in Dallas. And for the longest time would always just, be in my ear about Latin America, blah, blah, blah. And so whenever I decided to kind of take the jump into digital nomad, he had already been doing it for maybe, 2 or 3 months prior to the time I decided to join as well. I just said, hey, where would you like to go first? And he said, let's go down to Colombia for a little bit and just figure stuff out from there. Our original plan was we were going to basically just explore all of South America this entire year.
Mm-hmm.
But we kind of quickly realized that, living in and out of Airbnbs is a challenge, both financially and just remaining focused. And it just wasn't super feasible. So we decided to kind of come up to Mexico City, which is where, he had spent some time growing up. Mm-hmm. And, since he's a Mexican citizen as well, he was able to get approved for like an apartment really easily. And so that's kind of what led us to Mexico City.
Yeah, you already touched on such an important topic as, traveling and being a digital nomad is so exciting, but very often we, especially at the beginning, don't realize how challenging it might be, moving and then figuring out all the issues with lifestyle connections, etc., and just staying focused on what you actually have to do for work.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, definitely underestimated how challenging it would be. I figured as long as I just had consistent Wi-Fi, I could remain focused and do work from anywhere. But there's definitely a level of, just to reiterate the word focus, right? That comes from kind of having somewhat of a routine, even though that routine may be somewhat fluid, as long as you kind of have a, default routine you can kind of fall back into. That makes it a lot more easy just to remain focused into your work, stay on top of things really, because it's definitely a little easy to, lose sight of what's important, so to say, whenever you're just traveling, having fun, because everything's so new, everything's so exciting. You want to go do this, you want to go do that, you meet new people every day. And so it's definitely can get to where, the travel kind of comes above your work at times. And for me, right, that's just not the stage of my life where, I need work to still be a big aspect of my life.
Yeah, for me, it's the same. And I met quite a few entrepreneurs who how do all these people, do all these things and get any work done? It seems like everyone's on vacation or something.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I work in the real estate industry, right? So I've been working in the real estate industry for about 6 years now. I founded my own company at the end of last year, which, funny enough, is the exact same time I decided to become a digital nomad. So as I am building and working on starting my own company, kind of going out on my own, I'm also traveling. And so lots of people are always like, oh, you're on vacation, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, I'm not on vacation. My environment is just different from yours, but I'm still locked in and working every day. And, my life's really not that much different from yours. I'm just in different places than what you guys are typically used to. And especially being in the real estate industry, there's a lot of other industries that I think kind of welcome and even encourage digital nomad, like tech, for example, and just a lot of the other kind of startups. But real estate being kind of like a somewhat traditional old school industry, there's not a lot of other real estate digital nomads that I've met a couple, definitely have met a couple, but the majority of the industry kind of is like almost shunning, like, oh, you're not going to see properties every day, blah, blah, blah. How are you doing this? And so it's just kind of a learning curve for them and kind of just exploring and kind of opening up their minds like, no, it is possible. You just have to have some really good systems and processes in place.
Yeah, so maybe share some of these, processes and systems. And you mentioned your default routine that allows you to maintain certain level, of productivity that you're shooting for. Because for me, for example, being outside of the real estate industry, I don't even know how it works being a digital nomad.
Sure. So I am a realtor back in Texas. In addition, I do what's called wholesaling. Wholesaling is basically we just source investment style properties for investors, right? So our main clients are actually hedge funds. And due to the fact that we work with hedge funds, they are bigger companies and corporations that themselves have really good systems and processes in place. So what we kind of do is we just plug into their systems and processes, which then pretty much allows us to be remote, right? So one of the biggest challenges of doing real estate remotely is like, well, okay, someone needs to go actually see the property if we're going to, close on it or XYZ. And so the reason we work with the hedge funds is because they have full built out inspection teams in all the markets that they do deals in or purchase in. And so what we do is we just have to make sure that we schedule and align the the inspection time between the seller and the buyer. I have team members back in Dallas, which is the majority of where my business is done. And so, they're able to kind of do anything that's required to be in person for.
Okay, I see. Yeah, now I understand at least how it can work. And what about your, personal routines that allow you to do your work, to still be productive, to be focused, and also enjoy, obviously, all the digital nomad lifestyle offers, like traveling or adventures or experiences? Like, what's your default routine?
For sure. So one of the most important aspects, if not the most important aspect of my routine is obviously working out. I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, that's probably holds true, especially being on the Fit and Fitness podcast, or Fit and Focus rather. And while traveling, that can be really difficult because, maybe for a week you're in one place. Well, where are you going to work out, right? How can you get access to a gym? How are you going to schedule your time blocking to a degree that, okay, well, last week I was only 5-10 minute Uber from the gym. Now I'm a 20-30 minute Uber from the gym I usually go to. So those type of challenges is really what I found to be the most difficult while actually just continuously traveling. Now being set up in Mexico City, we were able to, like I said, get more of a long-term apartment, which means I can really dial out that time blocking schedule. Is like, okay, I know how long it takes to get to the gym. I know exactly what time I need to leave. I know what time I need to kind of be set up in the office, which is another thing, being productive, right? Like it's nice to work off my laptop, at a coffee shop, XYZ, but to have like a home office with my full built out monitor with, a desk that I consistently show up to every day, that's really where I see the more productivity come into play whenever I'm being able to be consistent with my environment, so to say, to a degree.
Yeah. And, I even wrote about that environment, it primes your brain. It kind of like turns on, a special mode, like where you work or where you rest or where you do something else. That environment is
100%. Really... Yeah. I mean, it's really the decision fatigue, right? Really starts to set in whenever you're constantly traveling. Cause it's like, oh, where am I going to work today? What coffee shop do I go to? Where can I go to work out? XYZ, right? So that decision fatigue really starts to set in whenever you don't have a consistent routine. And of course, having a balanced lifestyle, right? Like you want to have fun, you want to go travel. I still promote that and I still do that myself, obviously. But I think it's just kind of knowing, when to do that and when not to do that. Like I said in the beginning, right? My original plan was just to go travel all throughout South America for the entire year. Quickly realized, okay, maybe that's not, super feasible if I'm still trying to work and grow my business each and every day.
Yeah, I totally agree. I first also wanted to join this. Well, not at first at the beginning, but this year I wanted to join this remote year program where every month you like change country and do all these experiences. And it sounded good, but after 2 days, I realized I'm not going to be able to do any kind of work doing that. And so I just settled down in one city.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it really boils down to what I was saying, right? The decision fatigue. Just because, whenever you're having to make small decisions every day, it kind of eliminates your ability to really focus on those big decisions that are important to have your business thrive successfully.
Yeah. And, decision fatigue, even people like Mark Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, they always, talked about that and how they choose the same clothing, the same routine, like eliminate decisions everywhere where it's not essential. Right. So, a little bit more on that, like where else do you try to eliminate decisions with different, routines so you have more decisions, better decisions available for your work and other essential things?
Yeah, sure. So I think a big one is also, eating your food, right? So I typically try to meal prep or at least have food at my house that I can make. And, I usually kind of eat the same consistent things, that I know is healthy. I know I like. I know it's relatively easy and quick for me to prepare just because, I am a young guy who doesn't really put a whole lot of effort into his cooking, but I like to at least eat good, eat healthy. And so I typically just, go to the store once a week, buy the same things that I typically always buy, which in the beginning of going to a new place, that's even a challenge, right? Because it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, what store am I going to go to? I'm in Latin America, so these are different brands that I'm used to, XYZ. So there's a little bit of decision fatigue up front, but then once you kind of get those dialed in, just kind of remaining true to, that specific process and continuing to do that each and every week. So that's one thing. I try to limit
Mm-hmm.
eating out as much as possible, or Uber Eats. I find
Mm-hmm.
myself anytime I go to a new environment, I fall back to that, right? I'm hitting Uber Eats up. I'm doing Rappi here in Latin America, and it's just really adding to that decision fatigue, and kind of just overall detrimental to my overall routine and kind of lifestyle to a degree. And so that's a big one. Another one would probably be who I spend my time with, and
Mm-hmm.
so that's one thing I actually feel like is a benefit from traveling, or benefit to traveling, is whenever you're back in your hometown, or where you're always from, right, you have a lot of distractions and a lot of outside energy from other people who no fault to their own, but right, they kind of steal your decision fatigue, or they distill your energy. They kind of impede onto your timing schedule, right? Hey, let's
Mm-hmm.
go grab lunch. Hey, do you want to meet up today and work at the coffee shop, blah blah blah, which that is enjoyable and it is fun, but there's certain times, whenever I'm having to remain really focused on my work, that can be kind of a distraction more so than anything. And so traveling, I only know, like, I mean, I can meet people pretty quickly, but most of the time those people aren't super impeding onto your day-to-day work, just because you don't have a super close relationship with them in the beginning, or you're traveling, right? So
Mm-hmm.
maybe you're with them for a couple weeks or so, and then they go off somewhere, then you go off somewhere else. So I think that's a big benefit, just because you kind of are forced to, even though traveling is a really external and kind of extroverted type of thing, in a lot of ways it's also really self-internalized and self introverted, because you are going a lot of places where you don't really know a lot of people, and so you kind of have a lot of time to yourself, and I think that's really good thing.
Mm-hmm. So you found that it helps with your productivity and focus.
Yeah, definitely. Just because, not surrounded by all my friends, not surrounded by even my family, right? Which, trust me, I love my family. I go see them just about every month or so, just because it's a relatively short flight back to Dallas from Mexico City. But it is a benefit, from the day to day, just, kind of being just by yourself and focusing on what you need to focus on, and focus on your routine. It is pretty liberating, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can totally relate to that one. I find it that in a new destination, you like kind of super hyper focused on what's going on in all the other areas too. Yeah, you have this new place, but other than that, you kind of don't have many things. So you can totally focus on just like one project, one thing that you're doing. But do you think it can be also challenging? Like what I found at some point, that I, especially traveling long term and not necessarily seeing my family and friends all that often, that I needed that community, right? So, for example, that's why I'm staying now for the past 10 months in one place,
Mhm.
because I wanted to build a community. Do you find it challenging? That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes, I definitely find that challenging. And one of my kind of traveling philosophies is like, I want to stay wherever I go for quite some time. So far, I've really only been to two destinations for the most part. I've been to Medellin, Colombia, which we spent
Mm-hmm.
3 months there, and then Mexico City, which I've been here for almost 5 months now. And at first we were going to just only stay in Medellin for, a couple weeks, but we had that same kind of thought, me and my friend who I was traveling with, which that's also a big benefit, is I do have a travel buddy,
Mm-hmm.
so to say, which I have made some solo trips. But most of our long-term travels have been kind of planned and put out together, right? And so that's a big aspect of keeping us, somewhat of a community, because I
Mm-hmm.
do have him with me. But that was one of the big contributing factors that made us want to stay in Medellin for a little bit longer, because we did start to make some relationships, but
Mm-hmm.
we were planning on leaving in a couple of weeks. And so we just, talked one day and we're like, why don't we stay here? And that's exactly what we wanted to do and accomplish, was like, how about we stay here and kind of, develop some relationships and really kind of leave like a stamp here, so to say, right, of where if I ever decide to go back to Medellin, I have tons of friends who are there now. I have great relationships. I made business relationships there. And I'm cultivating the same type of, same thing here in Mexico City as well. And so I do feel like that is 100% correct. I think a lot of times in the beginning, you're like, no, let's go spend, a month here, a week there, blah, blah, blah. But really it's, I don't feel like you're really getting as much out of it as you can if you are kind of hopping all over the place, right?
Yeah, you kind of like, I think if you do that, you just feel like a tourist, really. You
Yes,
don't really,
exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
you don't get to know that, you don't get to meet the local spots, you don't get to meet a lot of the locals, things along those lines. And for me, like my traveling, like I really don't do a lot of the touristy things, to be honest. Like I'm kind of bad about that. I wish, I should do a little bit more of the touristy things just so I can say I did. And, I'm sure it's enjoyable. But for me, I really do like to kind of focus more so on developing relationships with people who I go to, with people who are from the areas that I'm traveling to, have them kind of show me what they like to do, things along those lines. And so, yeah, I would agree with that as well.
Yeah, I'm the same. I haven't done, even in those 10 months that I've been here in Playa del Carmen, a lot of touristy stuff. But I feel like I feel the place so much better because I connected with so many more people, organized a few communities, meetups here, and it started to feel like home even.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I just got back to Mexico City this weekend. I had to go back to Dallas, and I actually went down to the beach with my family there in Texas, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm ready to go back home. And home for me now is Mexico City. Like it's kind of funny, but that is true, right? I like to be able to call a place home before actually leaving that place. And I think that the community is really what would make that place home, so to say.
Yeah, at some point also, I've been doing this for 11 years, this nomad lifestyle. And I realized that pictures don't really make a place feel any special, like, play pictures or tourist destinations, but people do. Like once you get to know people there, truly connect with them, that's what makes the place really like shine in your memories, in your heart. That's what I found. Is back to your lifestyle. You mentioned some of your routines like working out, eating certain foods, having certain routine. Is there anything else? Well, also, just having friends and community. Like, is there anything else that you'd like to mention, like a part of your routine to stay well and healthy and productive?
Yeah, I'll have to think about that a little bit. I would say that definitely, whenever I first go to a place, I always want to try to make friends before I kind of get settled in, so to say. That is definitely a big important aspect to me. I've used a lot of the like, which is the way we met actually through like the Facebook digital nomad groups. I did that in Medellin, which is actually how I ended up meeting one of my really good friends who, is probably going to remain a lifelong friend for me. Is we met through there. He was a Colombian local, and we developed a really good relationship. And so, yeah, I would say that building friends is definitely a good first objective anytime you go somewhere, and kind of getting some people, because although I was speaking on the benefits of being kind of introverted and focused on your routine and things like that, is like, well, most of the reason that people travel is because we like excitement, we like to go do fun things, XYZ. And so, it makes it a lot easier whenever you have other people to go share those experiences with.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. For me, what I realized, yeah, it's fun to go and experience things, but it's what makes it extra fun is people you go with.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit more maybe about your routines. What challenging things might be there, or maybe tricks and tools and hacks that you learned, over those like months of nomadic experience that you had. So let's take exercise. You kind of touched upon that you personally seem to be looking for gyms, or do you do anything else? Like, what if there is no gym, or you've always like trying to look for one?
Yeah, that's going to be a big aspect for me. Is I definitely want to find a gym, just because that's been a big kind of building block of my lifestyle even before travel. And on top of that, right, a lot of times the gym can even help you build a community. You can meet friends
Yeah.
at the gym. things along those lines, which we have before, right? Like in Colombia, we ended up meeting some other fellow digital nomads from the gym. And so that's kind of something I usually will research before kind of making pulling the trigger on a destination. Like, I try to, if I'm going to figure out my Airbnb or hotel or whatever it may be, I'm also simultaneously looking to see if where the nearest gym is. And if what's good about Latin America is there's some gyms that actually are basically all of Latin America. And if you have a membership for one of those gyms, you can basically go to any of the gyms throughout the entire Latin America, which would be Body Tech and SmartFit. SmartFit is in basically every single Latin American country. You get a membership there at one of the locations. You can go to any of the locations throughout the entire continent, which is awesome. As far as like tools, I would say my absolute biggest tool is Google Meets and Zoom, which I think is probably pretty redundant for the digital nomads. But yeah, my team is all remote outside of my friend who travels with me. He works for me as well, works with us as well. But we do have a guy who's up in Oregon. We have some team members there in Dallas. We have a team member in Florida. And so, we definitely, if we didn't consistently meet on Google Meet, I think it'd be really easy for us to lose our momentum. Our relationship would probably kind of start to drift away, things along those lines. And so having like that consistent video call, I think is really important. We typically, almost every work day, we're hopping into a Google Meet or a Zoom and just doing our own tasks, right? Like maybe we're not even meeting about anything specifically or talking about anything specifically, but just to keep that connection alive and keep it pushing forward is really important to me and to the rest of the team.
Yeah, I guess, kind of like imitating this coffee, I don't know, break, accidental meetings.
I would say imitating an office space is really what I would, kind of think of it like, right? It's almost like we are all showing up to the office every day. Like, hey, let's try to all be here tomorrow at 10 a.m. Cool. We all hop on at 10 a.m. It really does feel like, and like I said, half the time, maybe we're all on mute and doing our own things and listening to our own music, blah, blah, blah. But we're all still connected there. We all are keeping each other accountable. And because building a team, right, one of the biggest things why people leave is because they don't feel connected to the team, right? And being completely remote and being completely digital, that's kind of a big challenge, I think, for anyone who does that. And, I think everyone does it in different ways. But for us, what we found is works the best is just kind of imitating that typical, hey, if we were all in the same place, if we had an office that we went to every day, this is kind of how it would look like. And so we're kind of trying to imitate that to the best of our ability.
Yeah, it's very smart, just doing those regular check-ins. Great tool. I think a lot of people might not think about it, especially, people who have remote teams or building their businesses remotely and need to connect with partners or, again, teams. What about, you mentioned gym, you also mentioned nutrition, and you also mentioned, in the message that we exchanged, like your own health journey. So nutrition seems to be, a big kind of piece of, your lifestyle. So do you have any advice, like simple for people who work remotely or especially digital nomads who travel, like how to keep it simple, but also healthy and meeting all of your needs, and maybe also how to mix it with, some of the eating experiences. And so you don't go overboard and don't suffer from that.
So that's definitely like you said, it's definitely an important aspect of my life. At one point in my life, I weighed like 250 pounds whenever I first initially dropped out of college. And so, that was a big journey for me just overall in my life, and really kind of the Kickstarter to what led me down my entrepreneurship journey, honestly. And which is why the gym is a big building block for my daily routine, in part with nutrition. The gym comes first. Well, nutrition is definitely comes first, but the gym kind of, I feel like, keeps me accountable as far as my nutrition goes. That's something I'm still trying to figure out as I travel. Obviously just going to the grocery stores. Like for me, for example, I eat a very simple diet, like most of the time, just ground meat with rice and beans, which obviously being in Mexico is really accessible. Fruits and vegetables, of course, which is also very accessible. I actually found that, the nutrition being outside of the US is almost easier just because a lot of the food here isn't as processed. It doesn't come with a lot of the MSG or the aspartame, as long as you kind of check out for that. And so, just like I said in the beginning, if you go, you have to figure out which grocery store is going to kind of be your go-to grocery store, right?
Which ones are your favorite?
So in Latin America, I have, honestly, the closest one to my apartment is just Walmart. And so I just go to Walmart a lot of the times. There's also another one, I'm forgetting the exact name of it. I believe it's called City Place, I believe, something along those, City Mark. That one is a lot nicer than Walmart and has a lot of, nicer foods. It's a little bit more expensive, but, I try to go to that one as well. And like I said, right, I just kind of keep things really simple and eat a lot of the same things each and every day. Luckily, also, I found that, a lot of the restaurants and places, I'm sorry, my dogs are barking too loud. A lot of the restaurants I found here, and I live in Polanco, specifically in Mexico City. There's a lot of like access to very healthy foods, smoothie shops that have very natural and healthy smoothies and things along those lines as well. So I would say it's just kind of, creating that baseline of, what your nutrition is going to look like, and then trying to stick to it to your best of your ability. And then definitely allowing yourself a little bit of freedom, especially being in, new places. You definitely want to try the foods that are culturally important and are honestly amazing. And so just kind of keeping your everyday nutrition on that baseline, keeping it consistent, and then allowing maybe a few outliers here and there.
Yeah.
And then another thing that I've found that is honestly a lot easier to stay consistent with while traveling is intermittent fasting. Just because it allows you to, not have to really worry about your nutrition as much, right? Just because obviously you're not eating for a good portion of the day.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. And for the same reason, it just makes things so simple when you don't have to think about your food all that often. And
absolutely.
What I also found with digital nomads in general, the ones who succeed seem to have really well set up routines. Like you have a lot of freedoms, but you also have created those boundaries that, keep you on track, focused and thriving.
Yeah, well, there's a really important quote that I try to remind myself of very often, is that like discipline creates the freedom, right? And so without the discipline, then you will crash and burn trying to just go out. And I've seen a lot of digital nomads who just go party every day and XYZ, and those are the ones who usually end up going back home within the first 3 or 4 months. For me, I kind of want this to be, wow, 11 years of digital nomad. That's absolutely amazing. I'm not even into my first year yet, but that's kind of the route that I'm looking to go, right? Like I want this to be my lifestyle for a long period of time. And so I have to be very disciplined about the things that are going to keep me successful in that route.
Yeah. And by the way, quote is from Jocko Willing. No, that's where you got it.
Yep. That is correct. That is correct. Absolutely.
So on point with the routines. Yeah. And people who do not succeed and who burn out and who feel like they can't sustain it, usually people who just fail to set up those routines. And, I always like to remind people that when you go like working for yourself or going to work remotely or going to be a digital nomad, those are the things that you need to figure out first, like your routines that will allow you to sustain your lifestyle, your health, your sanity, your mental health and relationships. So you mentioned exercise, nutrition, the community, friends. Do you have anything around your sleep? Because I also notice, with a lot of people that goes all over the place with traveling.
Yes. So I'm one of those people who has gone all over the place with traveling. Back whenever I was, still living in Dallas, I was very, very intentional with my sleep. I had a very good sleep schedule. I would typically go to sleep around 10:30 or so and would try to be at the gym by 5 a.m., which would just, kickstart my day, would make my productivity, really, really well. That definitely is not the case even today. I'm trying to work back towards that, but it is definitely a challenge while, while building a community, right, you kind of have to sacrifice a few other things in order to cultivate some of those friendships, in order to cultivate some of those relationships and things along those lines. Sleep to me is still very important and is, one of the more important factors of, I think, anyone's life, or at least it should be. And so I still try to get at least, 7 hours a night. And constantly I'm working back towards that consistent routine that I had. But it's almost like every time I have to go back to Dallas or, take another trip, even if it's for a short period of time, that sleep schedule is usually one of the first things that happens to fall off. And so that's what's really, whenever I do come back to Mexico City to where I'm heading back to my default routine, that's what I usually try to, put a lot of my effort and focus on to fixing first, so to say.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Change of locations, change of routines, etc. It might affect, sleep schedule. What about routines around light? Do you have any? Like, as a coach in that area, I always start working with people just based on recent research around light, like a lot of natural light during the day,
Right.
and then blue
Wow.
light.
So yes, absolutely. So funny enough, my friend's father, the one that I've been mentioning about, he's actually a doctor here in Mexico City, and one of his biggest kind of claim to fames, or the thing that he focuses on the most, is light therapy, right? So we actually go and do red light therapy pretty often. Anytime we get sick or kind of feeling under the weather or anything like that, we'll typically go to the clinic, get some red light therapy. I am an avid fan of Andrew Huberman, which I'm sure you are as well. And so I believe in first thing you do when you wake up in the morning is go get some sunlight so you can really set that circadian rhythm. And then, walks in the evening so I can get that yellow light at the night as well. And yeah, as far as the blue light goes, I'm pretty much blind. And so I have seeing glasses, and, I spend a lot of time on my computer, and I'm typically always wearing my seeing glasses, which do have blue light blockers. Yeah, so I do have somewhat of a routine around that. It's not super intense, so to say, like some of my other routines are, but it's definitely something that's kind of on my radar. I would say my main routine for that is just trying to get that sunlight as early as possible so that I can have a healthy circadian rhythm.
Yeah. It just, for me, it's like music to my ears to hear that more and more people doing that. After hearing that from Andrew Huberman and just from other like circadian rhythm researchers like Sachin Panda, etc., and trying it on myself and with other people, I realized how freaking, powerful and essential it is for human being, that light and the right exposure and the right kind at the right time. So yes, thank you for sharing that. For me, at night, I'm just very strict about any kind of bright light. I try to avoid it as much as possible. In my apartment, it's like cave sort of thing. There's like candlelight and very yellow, orange, not bright lights around. And I definitely notice the difference, if I have a lot of bright light at night, like my sleep is delayed by at least an hour.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's something that I used to be very intentional with also. As I've, I had before I started traveling, my routine at every aspect was kind of firing on all cylinders, right? Like it was really dialed in, even to what you're talking about with the light XYZ. With me, traveling for the last 4 months or so, and now it's kind of starting to get structured again, kind of starting to ease back into trying to cultivate those, or not even cultivate because they're cultivated, but really trying to dial them all specifically in, from fitness to nutrition to productivity to, mental health and taking care of myself, just fitness wise. Right. I find it to be, I definitely was thrown off there for quite a while, just because of the things that we've discussed and the natural, tendencies that come with, traveling, especially. For me, this was my first time really traveling ever. Like I had never even left the US before, kind of taking the leap into full digital nomad. So there was a lot of things for me to learn. Like I had barely, growing up, I had really like left Texas only a handful of times. And so just being kind of new to travel and then kind of taking, going from 0 to 100, I definitely saw a lot of aspects of my routine kind of suffer and kind of take a few steps back. Whereas now that I'm kind of structured in Mexico City and settled in, so to say, ability to really dial back in on all those different aspects of my routine.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that your routine suffered, especially at the beginning. So would you mind sharing with listeners some of those like struggles? So maybe moments where you really felt like you screwed up something and something had to change. I think, for people, it would be great to hear those stories so they kind of know in advance what to expect and what maybe to pay attention more to. Do you remember some of those struggles?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that really it's not anything one thing major, right? It's a lot of little things that kind of add up. And then, so it's easy to tell yourself, like, oh, it's okay if I don't go to the gym today. Oh, I'm in this new country. I might as well eat this, blah, blah, blah. Another thing that actually I haven't mentioned before, but was quite a big challenge while traveling at the beginning as well, was just hydration. Like I tried to at least drink a bottle or a gallon of water every single day. And, that was somewhat challenging at first also because, you have to be intentional about that. And if you're not intentional about it, then you're falling to whatever is just available to you. And so if it's not available to you, it's an extra decision and extra effort that you have to take in order to hit that goal. And so I think it's just the little things that kind of add up over time. And it's easy to kind of let them fall to the side and not give it a whole lot of effort or thought. But then fast forward, 2-3 months later, whenever you kind of like look up, so to say, you're like, oh, wow, I really have not been hitting, my routine 6 months ago was kicking my routine's ass now, you know what I mean? And so I think it's just the little things that add up that it's easy for you to make excuses for, just because, it's really easy to tell yourself like, oh, especially while traveling, like, oh, I'm living life to the fullest, XYZ, I'm having fun. These are new experiences. And like, that is valuable. Right. And so it's kind of a internal conflict there of like, okay, so like these are valuable experiences. This is something that is helping me grow internally as a person. It's helping me, become a better version of myself. But it's also can be detrimental to the things that kind of got me to that place, so to say. And so I think, just to really keep the little things, the devil's in the details, right? Like keep the little things consistent and you'll find much better success. And I think that, it's a journey, of course, right? And there's different seasons in everyone's life and of course, different seasons, I think, within everyone's travel journey. And so you're probably going to find seasons that, you maybe fall off of your routine a little bit. You're doing, you're not really focused on, the things that you should be focused on, so to say. But then, only allow that to happen for so long before you kind of need to have some boundaries set into place to where, okay, like I went out of the boundary a little bit. It's time to get back into the, time to get back into the past, so to say.
I agree with it 100% and just wanted to add that about those boundaries, what helped me a lot is having external boundaries. And what I mean by that is like with hydration, for example, I decided, that no matter how I'm going to feel, like liter in the first 3 hours of waking, that's what I'm going to do, and half a liter for the next 3 hours. It's just what works for me. And I have a bottle, to measure that. And it just in a lot of areas of my life, like exercise 30 minutes a day, non-negotiable. Right. And I found that having those systems and not relying on like how I feel or where I am, what resources I have, once you commit to certain things, your mind will find a way. Like that might not be, a gym or just body weight workout at home with some app or YouTube video, but you're still gonna be able to do that if you're really commit to that.
Yeah, I would agree. And another, I'm pretty sure it's another Jocko quote is like detach and execute, right? Like set your non-negotiables for what you want each day to look like. Or not even what you want the day to look like necessarily, but what habits you want to repeat consistently for each and every day. And then just do those things no matter what, right? Like do not make any excuses. Do not let anything else get in the way of those. Do not have any external, inputs really defer or, add to that decision. And just get those things done. And then, what I typically find is once I do get those things done, I'm feeling 100 times better, right? Like even if my day started bad or whatever it may be, and I didn't feel really good when I first woke up, I had brain fog, XYZ. As soon as I'm done, drinking my, as soon as I, hit the hydration and I go work out or, and do some body workouts at home, even going as simple as just going for a kind of a longer walk, if that's, what you need to do, just because that's all you have available to you. Just staying consistent with those things is really where I think you start to see a lot of results in all the different aspects of your life. And what I've also noticed as well is, a lot of people think like, well, how can you do all these different things? Sasha. It's like, how can you do all these different things, right? Like, how can you be focused on each and every aspect? Like, that just sounds exhausting. But what I've found is like, whenever I'm really firing on all cylinders, it makes it easier for me to do each and every single thing. Does that make sense? Like, instead of just like, oh, I'm just going to go to the gym today. Okay, well, that's a good start. But how about you go to the gym, you eat right, you get your hydration in, and maybe you don't allow any light, any bright lights at night. I find that whenever you kind of add all those things together, it makes it easier to do each respective one.
Yeah. And then also it just gives your days some sort of like really good structure, and you have so much energy and clarity around other things that you just by default start doing a lot more just because you have this structure in place. And you did this, did that, and then you just keep doing things. And plus you have all this energy when you take care of yourself, right?
100%. Yeah, no, I totally agree.
So we touch on a lot of things, Kyle. It was really amazing. Thank you for sharing this. A couple of other things I wanted to touch upon before we wrap up. Supplements. Do you take any? What's your take on that?
Yeah, so I definitely do. I also take vitamins. As I mentioned before, my friend's dad is a doctor, so he has us on an entire cocktail of different vitamins each and every day. So I take multivitamin for men, of course. I take zinc, magnesium, fish oil for the brain. I take vitamin C, vitamin D. And then as far as just supplements go, I'm typically, and then actually another one of the supplements that we take every day is called methylene blue, which is actually, are you familiar with methylene blue?
I am, but I heard controversial reviews of that, like from different scientists and professionals. So I've taken myself, but heard of it.
I see. So yeah, that is something I take every now and then is methylene blue, and then go outside and do the red light therapy as well. And then supplements, protein. Typically I'll have a protein shake every single day. BCAAs and creatine.
Okay, so a lot of good stuff. Do you find it challenging getting that, or keeping it that handy while traveling, or like what's your to-go routine around that, where to get them, or to keep them?
Yeah, so it just depends on the specific situation, but I typically have been able to find those basic supplements pretty much every place I've been at, like either just a health shop or a vitamin shop. Luckily enough, here in Mexico, we have GNC, right? So like that makes it really easy to keep me stocked. But, I've even traveled with my like protein in my bag and stuff like that before. So just being intentional about it. I think that as long as you're intentional about it and you're not somewhere just like, I haven't gone anywhere completely remote or anything like that as of yet. Playa, I don't know. I feel like Playa is probably pretty accessible as well. I wouldn't be surprised if you guys have a GNC there. But I could see where if you're going somewhere, relatively remote, it could be a challenge to find that stuff once you get there. So probably just planning ahead would probably be your best bet.
Yeah, that's what, I also recommend people traveling, just plan ahead. But here in Mexico, so they have Amazon. Maybe it's not, such of a big selection, but they still have a lot of stuff there.
Yep.
Yeah. What about, your brain productivity? I feel like it's also a huge thing for you. Do you do anything specifically like for your brain, maybe to focus better? And that can be behavior, that can be a supplement you're taking, anything.
Yeah, I would say probably the biggest thing for me as far as that goes is meditation and consistent with studying, like listening to podcasts, trying to limit my, trying to have more podcasts coming into my head than the music or, anything else, just cheap entertainment, so to say. Really limiting my, my inputs into my brain. And then really what I see has the biggest benefits to my mental clarity and just brain productivity is the sauna for me. So that's another reason why the gym is really important, because typically that's where I can find the sauna as well.
Okay, so meditation, are there any specific kinds or ways you get yours done?
So really what I just try to do is typically my meditation routine is, it's usually in the sauna. I usually do about 20 minutes in the sauna. And what I just do is I just focus on my breath and my breath work and try to not allow any thoughts to come in, or just not control any thoughts, so to say, right? Just really try to clear your mind. Just, focus on the mechanics of the breathing and just try to do that for as long as I can. And typically I find that I'm really, feeling really well after that, feeling really clear. And then another thing for me that definitely keeps me, moving forward and focused, and I think really keeps my head in a good place is my faith. So I'm a very devoted Christian, always trying to, every day listen to, my daily Bible or even read my Bible. And so that really kind of keeps me focused as well.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for sharing these details. Breath work, you mentioned, is it like specific kind of breath work, or you just focus on your breathing, meaning paying attention to that?
So mainly just no specific type of breath work, just focusing on my breathing. I've definitely heard really, really good things about, some very specific breath works and breath work exercises. I just haven't taken the step and doing that quite yet. I find that, start where you are, so to say, right? Like do what works for you. And then after doing that consistently enough and, really developing that to the highest degree, at that point, maybe kind of step out and move to something maybe a little bit more advanced. But for me right now, it's just, trying to have that quiet time, focusing on my breath, not allowing, like I said, any thoughts or anything like that to seep into my brain as much as I can. And then just, move forward with that each and every day.
And how long do you usually do that?
So I try to do that for at least 20 minutes or so.
Okay. And how long do you usually spend in the sauna? Like what's the maybe a degree protocol or time protocol?
Yeah, so that's something that's outside of my control as far as the degree. Ideally it would be around 180 degrees Fahrenheit to have the best results. Most of the time the gyms are set at that, but I have little faith that they are always actually at that. It depends on the location for sure. Like I've definitely been to some saunas that definitely are probably at that 180 degree point, but then some other ones that probably aren't as hot, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. And I try to do at least 20 minutes in there as well. So pretty much the entire time I'm in the sauna, I'm just focusing on my breath, trying to make sure my mind stays clear. And typically I'll listen to like some type of binaural beats or something along those lines.
Yeah, really cool routine. And, something connected to temperature. Do you do any cold showers by any chance?
Oh, yeah. So I definitely will take cold showers. Back at home, back in Dallas, I actually had access to a very advanced ice bath type of thing. I think it was around 41 degrees, I believe, if I recall correctly. And I would do cold therapy as well. Haven't found something that really, aside from cold showers, right, which is definitely something, it's beneficial. I don't think it's as beneficial as doing a complete like ice plunge. But for traveling, if you don't have the like access to a full out, ice bath or something along those lines, then cold showers can kind of get the job done for the meantime.
Yeah. The reason I ask, usually people who are into sauna also are into all kinds of cold or hot temperature exposures, because they just have such a profound effect also on your mental state.
Yeah. The sauna, that is really relaxing, depending on how long you stay in there, depending on how hot it is. And sometimes it can get pretty intense. But afterwards, right, you feel very
Yeah.
light, you feel very relaxed. The cold therapy is kind of a different animal. After that, you're feeling like you're ready to like run through a wall. Your body feels amazing, especially if you're working out, consistently and relatively aggressively. I think that in order to keep inflammation down and,
Mm-hmm.
soreness at bay, the cold is probably going to be the best bet for that. I don't think that the cold shower really accomplishes as like I'm sure it does to a degree, and you may know better than I do, whether or not that does have the same effects or as good of effects. But the actual ice plunge that I've done before
Mm-hmm.
is substantially it's exhilarating. The feeling you have after hopping out of that for 5 to 10 minutes or so
Mm-hmm.
is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, they say like it raises your dopamine and norepinephrine, like two main, brain chemicals for feeling motivated and awake and alert for like 300% or something like that. Sometimes even,
Wow.
yeah, even more. And it lasts for like several hours after. But that's specifically about cold plunge. You're right. Like
Cold
cold
plunge, yeah.
shower, yeah, do not do as much. They also do and they have the same effect, but that's not exactly the same because just how the water travels through your body,
Right.
like you're not immersed. And also here in Mexico, to be fair, I don't know how it is in Mexico City. Here the water is not really cold. It's like closer to
Yeah,
cold.
it's really cold or not that cold?
Not that cold. It's like
Yeah,
summer,
no.
I don't know, rain or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, it's not that cold, no. In Colombia, funny enough, we didn't really have much of a choice besides taking cold showers most of the time. And so that was kind of just innately done. But I think, like kind of the philosophy that we've been speaking about this entire podcast, right, is hey, maybe the cold shower isn't as great as an ice plunge, but at least it's still a step in the right direction. And if you're staying consistent with that, I think that you will see positive benefits from it.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. And especially, as a digital nomad, you got to kind of get used to the idea that you need to keep things flexible and figure out the simplest easy way to do the best next thing to whatever it is you're trying to do.
Yeah. You definitely, we've talked a lot about routine and staying consistent to your routine and things along those lines. But I think a sign of a fully, of a well-developed human is not being a slave to the routine, right? Like say
Mm-hmm.
you maybe you do sleep in one day and oh no, like you didn't make it to the gym this morning. Well, don't let that just completely derail your whole day, right? Like you need to remain especially while traveling. Like
Mm-hmm.
you have to really be flexible and kind of cultivate that mindset of like, hey, maybe it didn't go perfect, but I'm still going to try my absolute best to do the things that I've told myself I'm going to do.
Yeah, and that I think is just such a golden piece of advice. Just do whatever you can with whatever you have, at
Yes.
any
Yeah,
time you
absolutely.
can. Yeah, so thank you, Kyle, for this advice. To wrap up the episode, do you have any other like parting thoughts, advice, tips for people who might be considering digital nomad lifestyle, who might be remote, for example, but they think should I travel or should I stay at home? Like,
Yeah. I would say like probably if you're kind of on the fence about it, maybe try it out first. Before if you're like for me, for example, I kind of went all in. So it just worked out for me perfectly where the lease on my apartment back home was ending and I sold my car back home and I don't have a technical home back home, quote unquote.
mhm.
And so I fully went all in, but that's just because I knew the comfortability of myself, that I knew that this was something that I would be interested in doing, and I knew I would be successful at it. But if you're kind of on the fence about it, I would suggest just doing a trial run. Maybe go find somewhere that you've been thinking about going, or somewhere that you even have on your radar of like where you'd want to go live remotely, and go see it. Go see, how your day-to-day routine would look like there. See, scout out some of the things that we've talked about in this podcast that, are important to you. Maybe it's not a gym, but maybe you have things that are an important aspect of your, routine each and every day. And you want to make sure that the location and the environment is going to be able to suffice to your routine, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I would say give it a trial run. Take the leap. If you're on the fence, I think you should take the leap of at least giving it a trial run. And then after that trial, kind of see how you feel about it. See if that's, give it some thoughts now that you have the actual experience under your belt. And then you can make a much more educated decision, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Such great advice. And where people can connect with you and maybe learn about you, maybe there is something you'd like, people to know about you at the end of this episode, like, where people can connect, find you, learn more about what you do in your story.
Sure. Yeah. So really where I'm the most active, and I'm not the best at sharing my experiences or my journey on social media, but where I am the most active would be Instagram. And my Instagram is just my first and last name. So it's Kyle, Cheekk, Kyle Cheek with 2 Ks at the end of Cheek.
Yeah. I'm going to link it, by the way,
yes,
in the show notes for listeners.
Awesome. So yeah, I'd love that. A few hobbies of mine, of course, is real estate. So if any one of these people listening are interested in real estate and would like to learn more, or are already actively participating in the industry and either want to connect and try to do some deals together, or just
especially
want to know
remotely.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Or especially if you guys are not remote right now and y'all want to learn how I went full remote, then please reach out to me, connect. I'd be happy to kind of share some of the things that have worked for me. Another thing that I'm extremely passionate and love doing, which I'm kind of a novice at right now, but it's skydiving. So if anyone that's listening is an avid skydiver in or around Mexico City, would love to connect with you guys so we could go get some jumps together. That would probably be my conclusion there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I might connect with you when I decide to go to Mexico City and jump, because I love the sky and anything that it's related to jumping, flying, although I haven't done much.
Yeah, absolutely. I've only got 4 jumps in currently. I'm working on getting my license to where I can finally jump by myself. But it's something that I did for the first time only like maybe 7 months ago. And now I've gone already like 4 times. And every time I go back to Texas, I go and jump. I haven't jumped here in Mexico City yet. I do know that there's some certified drop zones around here, but it's a little more challenging to, schedule those whenever it's something new, as we've discussed basically this entire podcast.
Yeah, but I also in Playa del Carmen that actually they do a few jumps. I always see people jumping from somewhere and flying over to the beach.
Oh yeah, no. This last week, I actually did my first beach jump down in Port Aransas, Texas, which is like a small little beach town in Texas, but it's relatively pretty nice. And I did my first jump over the beach, and oh my gosh, it was amazing compared to just jumping over a field.
Yeah, I'm sure probably also scary. I don't know. At least for me, it's always scary.
It's a little scary every time, but it's only scary until you're falling out of the plane, and then once you're falling out of the plane, it's just fun.
Yeah, and for me, a lot of screaming. So thank you, Kyle. That was amazing conversation. Thank you for sharing all of this, routines and tools and your stories. So I'm sure our listeners will learn so much from it, and will, get some inspiration to try it out and also figure out, their routines that will keep it sustainable and also fun for them. So thank you. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. And it's like I've said before, right? It's still something I'm actively trying to figure out myself, which I think, you never do fully figure it out. But just keep taking those consistent action steps each day towards, trying to continue to make it better each and every day. And I think that's really where, you'll find the most success.
Yeah. I 100% agree. So thanks again, Kyle. And we'll stay in touch, stay connected.
Awesome. Always, absolutely. Yeah, Angela, I'm super grateful that you gave me the opportunity to come on and, share just a little bit about my journey with your audience. Like I said before, if anyone has, any interest in reaching out to me, Instagram would probably just be the best bet. And thanks again for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And so the fun is done. Sorry, guys, the conversation with Kyle was amazing and it's done. And I just wanted to quickly remind you that I am a certified coach, been coaching people, entrepreneurs, location independent, people working remotely, digital nomads for over a decade. And if you're someone who is struggling with your nutrition, fitness, sleep, productivity, and focus routines, maintaining high level of health, of fitness, and just feeling good. If you're struggling with routines and changing your habits and your energy and health, and habits and routines are all over the place, please reach out and I'll figure out how I can help you in the best for you way. The link to schedule our call to chat about it is in the show notes. So schedule it and let's all feel, look, and do our absolute best.